quickly put you guys on hold and go over to Manu Raju on Capitol Hill, who just talked to the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, who just came back from the CIA. Manu.
Yeah, that's right, Dana. Actually, him with a group of other senators going through reams of intelligence about this ongoing investigation into Russia and Russia hacking during the elections. One of the things that Mark Warner, the top Democrat on the committee, said is that he has a lot of questions because he saw data that suggests that Russia was trying to put out information aimed at helping one candidate and hurting another candidate. Take a listen.
Just came back from the CIA where there were 4 senators. We got a chance to look at some of the raw intel product. In many ways, we've got even more questions now. We've got more information we've got to get access to. I know as the committee gets into this next stage of listing who we want to have conversations with. But main thing is that we're all committed. There were Democrats and Republicans there today to keeping this bipartisan. The American people deserve to hear all of the facts. A lot of what we saw today was the evidence underlying how Russia manipulated the news, how it hacked into the DNC and John Podesta and leaked out in favor of one candidate against another candidate. But I think these efforts, beyond even the whole question about whether there were contacts between campaigns and the Russians, but this underlying assault on our democracy, I think Americans need to know about this and going forward be guarded in terms of what information they take in. And these same tactics are being used now in the French elections that are going on even as we speak.
You say that you have new questions now. Can you give us a sense of your top couple of new questions?
I'm just going to leave it at there are things that footnotes where you've got to go then and get the underlying source documents. So we've got more questions.
You say that, there was these news stories that suggest that they're trying to help one candidate over the other. Was there anything that suggests that the Trump campaign was involved in coordinating that release of information?
No, at this point, I'm not going to get into that part of the discussion. That's part of our investigation. It's always been about the misinformation. It's been about the hacking and selective release of emails, and it's been about whether there's been any contact between either campaign and the Russians prior to the election.
Now, Dana, I also asked him later, does he agree with the assessment from the top Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee that he has not seen any evidence yet of any contacts between Russian officials and Trump campaign associates? He would not comment on that, said I'm not going to get into anything about the evidence specifically that I have seen. He also was critical of Donald Trump suggesting that he had been wiretapped by the former president of the United States. He would not say if any evidence that he saw today was from any wiretaps. And of course, Dana, this comes as both Lindsey Graham and the top Democrat in the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee are trying to get information from the Justice Department over this issue of wiretaps, whether it actually happened. Even Graham telling me earlier that he's willing to subpoena the Justice Department if they do not comply with his request. Dana.
Manu, great get. I know how hard it is to move around the very large Capitol campus, and you are everywhere, always. You're the best. Thanks, Manu. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dana.
I want to bring our panel back in. And Elise Labott, I want to turn to you. You just heard from Mark Warner, again, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, who just saw the raw intelligence over at the CIA. Square that, or can you, with what Sean Spicer just said in the briefing, which is every time anybody's gone and looked at what really happened and gotten the intelligence, they come out and say nothing really happened. That's certainly not what Mark Warner said.
Well, what Sean Spicer is saying, that when they look at the intelligence, there's no quote-unquote collusion between the Trump campaign and members of the Russian government. I think that, look, 17 national intelligence agencies of the U.S. government have determined that Russia attempted to meddle in the U.S. election. By and large, there's an understanding or a assessment that they did it on behalf of helping Hillary Clinton. Now, that is different, as Sean Spicer has said, from collusion between members of the Trump campaign and the Russian government. Now, in my opinion, I think it's going to be impossible to conclude whether that influence that the Russians, by all accounts, tried to make into the election actually swayed voters. We don't know. I mean, I don't, unless every U.S. voter in the U.S. who voted for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump is going to be able to, explain why they voted the way they voted. I think that's impossible to tell. So the only question in terms of this election is whether that meddling or that collusion took place. And that's what I think the Senate Intelligence investigation might look at. Now, those are larger questions that Senator Warner is talking about Russian meddling in the U.S. election. There is evidence to believe that they're trying to do it in the French election. There's a German election coming up. Are they supporting those kind of right-wing, anti-EU candidates behind the scenes? We know in France they're supporting Marine Le Pen, who's a right-wing candidate. Right. So I think there's bigger questions about Russian interference, not just in the U.S., but across Europe. And what are those questions for U.S. policy? This president has still never said that he believes that Russia tried to meddle in this election and could have more nefarious aims abroad. So I think there are definitely different questions out there. And again, you can't conflate the meddling and the collusion.
That's a great point. David Chalian, what was your takeaway from what you heard from Mark Warner?
Well, first and foremost, this isn't going away, right? This issue is going to be with us, I think, for a long while, throughout the duration of the Trump administration, most likely. And I think that not just Mark Warner, but the Lindsey Graham, Sheldon Whitehouse request here is sort of calling President Trump's bluff, right? And I mean, exactly. It's sort of and giving an opening here.
Reiterate for our viewers what that request is.
The request was of the FBI and the Department of Justice to provide the warrants that were requested in court for the wiretaps, right? And it's not entirely clear. Does a court have to sign off to release that because it's done in a secret court, as you know? But nonetheless, there is this now invitation that Democrat Sheldon Whitehouse, Republican Lindsey Graham, oversight over the FBI in this scenario, comes in and says, hey, send us what you have on that. Send us the request. Send us the court ruling authorizing the warrant. And this is now an opportunity for Jim Comey to say, well, there is none, right? He doesn't want to necessarily talk about it, but they now have provided him an opening to say that there was no wiretapping because they're requesting the proof that there was. President Trump will have to answer for that.
Yeah, President Trump. What will he say, if this comes back and they say there was no wiretapping? What does the White House do? They've spent days essentially saying, standing by President Trump's tweets and saying, oh, it's up to Congress. So it'll be interesting to see, is this president embarrassed? He seems to not necessarily embarrass easily. Does he walk it back? Does this, I think, signal to him that words matter and he can't just spout off on Twitter just because he feels like it at 6:30 in the morning?
Guys, stand by. Go ahead, Gloria, real quick.
Sorry. One quick thing is that one other thing that Senator Warner said is he just came out and said Russia hacked into Podesta's emails. Well, is he then saying Russia equals WikiLeaks? It seems to me that he was.
That's an excellent point. Hold that thought. I want to bring in April Ryan, who is a White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Networks, on the White House lawn there. April, we watched you in the press briefing ask Sean Spicer about Congressman Elijah Cummings, who is meeting, as we speak, with President Trump. It's a long time coming.
Yeah, it's a long time coming. Well, actually not, Dana, because we're only a little bit more than a month and a half out from this presidency in totality. So not long after this president became president, he watched Congressman Elijah Cummings on television and talking about the issues of prescription drugs, the high cost of those drugs. And the president literally reached out, told his staff, hey, call him. And he placed a call to the congressman in his office, and they talked. And they tried to work something out. Their schedules did not mesh. And then, if you remember the first solo press conference of President Trump, he talked about the Congressional Black Caucus, and then he went into this thing about Congressman Cummings and how Senator Schumer told him not to meet when that wasn't true. Congressman Cummings basically said that he had scheduling issues, and he really wanted to meet with him. And with the congressman today, he's bringing the president of Johns Hopkins, as well as another congressional leader to talk about this. And I wouldn't be surprised if Congressman Cummings talks about some other issues that have been very pressing in the news lately as well.
Fascinating. And, you know, Gloria gave the president props for reaching out, and this is the same situation, even more so, because it's somebody from the other party. And you're right, it is only a month and a half. It just feels a lot longer.
It feels a lot longer.
April, thank you. Everybody else on the panel, thank you as well for your insights. And up next, a leading member of the Republican caucus is speaking out against the new health care proposal, and he will join me live. That is Congressman Dave Brat. What will it take to get him on board? Plus, rallies and protests nationwide to support a day without a woman. We'll take you there live and hear from women who say it's a protest without a point.
If you've been turned down for a mortgage because of credit or tax return issues,